Welcome back to The Drive, where we just drive around and talk about different topics. Today we're going to be talking about our 7-week-old getting RSV.
So last week, our 7-week-old got RSV, which was a little scary because we've seen so much online about how scary RSV is. So we ended up in the ER, and we were there for quite a while. Obviously he's fine now, but Rose is going to tell you a little bit more about what happened.
Yeah, so he got RSV. He originally had a stuffy nose, runny nose. Wasn't even really stuffy, more just kind of runny and that kind of thing. You could tell he was a little bit congested when he was eating, different things like that. And of course, my first thought was, what if it's RSV? It was just terrifying because, like Manny said, we see it online. But I tried not to think that way because it wasn't any type of severe, symptoms at that point. He just had barely anything. He wasn't coughing at first. And he was doing really pretty okay. And then the stuffy nose, runny nose, whatever, it started to get better. And so I was like, okay, I think he's getting better. Obviously, it wasn't anything bad. And that is where the breathing issue started. So on Monday, been exactly a week, he went in, or I was about to go into the office for a staff meeting, and he goes with me. So I was about to take him with me to the meeting, and I was all ready. I'd fed him all morning. He had eaten a few times already. I fed him all night long. He was eating a little bit more, and I think it was because of the sickness, which usually they do the opposite, but it was great that he was eating. And I didn't notice anything with his breathing. And then Manny had him laying on the couch and was changing him or something, and ended up noticing that his stomach was retracting, which if you've looked up RSV babies breathing, retractions, things like that, it looked exactly like that. So I'll let you tell Manny what you thought when you saw that.
Okay, so yeah, honestly, the day before, on Sunday, I did feel like I saw him breathing a little different, but I didn't want to think about it being RSV actually.
Well, it's hard with newborns too.
Yeah, because they
always do different stuff,
do random things, make random noises.
Right.
So I didn't really think too much of it, but it was in the back of my mind. And when Rose was getting ready on the Monday, I think I was changing him, and then I saw his stomach retracting a lot. So I thought, okay, he's got RSV, and I'm gonna have to tell Rose we're gonna have to go to the hospital. So I kind of awkwardly walked to the bathroom where Rose was getting ready, and she noticed me. She looked at me kind of weird. And
I thought he was looking for something, so I was asking him, what are you looking for? Because he was just looking around and acting really strange because he didn't want to tell me, because I'm definitely more of the panic one out of the two of us. Manny's more logical. I'm just more jump to panicking, so that's kind of my natural.
Trying to figure out a way to tell Rose we're gonna have to go to the hospital without her panicking, which doesn't matter anyway because she's gonna panic either way. I'm gonna tell her we're going to the hospital. So I ended up just telling her, and she panicked. Called everybody, her mom, her sister, who's a nurse, so to get her opinion on where we should go.
Because we actually had made a doctor's appointment. As soon as we noticed it, we called and asked if the doctor could see us that day. And they could. They only had one appointment, but it was in an hour, or maybe an hour and a half, I think. And an hour and a half seemed like such a long time for, the retractions we were seeing. I was just really nervous. So I wanted to know if we should go to urgent care, if we should go to emergency room, which honestly, it ended up taking just as long with what we ended up doing, but I still feel like it was the right thing. It felt right in the moment, and I don't think it wasn't wrong. But then we noticed that. I immediately called my boss. I'm not coming to the meeting. He's like, absolutely not. Just go take care of that. So really thankful for that. I would have went no matter what, but he's very, very supportive with parenting and kids and all that. So anyway, yeah, we go and we decide to go to the urgent care because I thought, well, that'll be faster. Well, it really wasn't, because we kind of live far from everything. But we go to the urgent care and we go in, we wait our turn, all this stuff, and he's actually still doing okay. Of course he's breathing that way, but he's still alert. He's wanting to eat. He's smiling when he's awake. He's doesn't seem to be uncomfortable really. So that helped not panic, but I was still nervous, of course. I knew it was RSV. So we go to the urgent care, and I'm hoping that she's just like, yeah, it's RSV, but like, you know, most babies recover at home. Even though you hear terrible stories, which they do happen, most of them do recover at home. So I was like, hopefully she's going to send us home. But the very opposite happened. She listened to him, listened to his lungs, and she was like, it's absolutely in his lungs. You guys need to go right now to the emergency room. He needs to be checked, and he might even need to be admitted. And she even said, because we were self-pay because of some insurance issues we've been having, she said, don't even pay, just leave, basically. Like, just go. You don't even have to pay. And so especially when she said we don't even have to pay, I was like, something's wrong, because you always have to pay a good amount of money, and it was going to be $100 and something for the visit. They'd already told us. And so I was like, this is not good. Immediately, I actually, our 2-year-old was with us, and he had accidentally called my mom during this time. So she was already on the phone, so I was like, I didn't mean to call you, but I have to tell you what's going on. And it was really hard because we had our 2-year-old with us, and I didn't want to panic so badly in front of him. So I was really trying to keep it calm, but I was definitely emotional. So then we go to the emergency room. What happens then?
And then there were people in the emergency room before us waiting to be seen. And we checked Lazarus in and all of that. And then all of a sudden this nurse comes busting out of the room, rips the blanket off of him, and is like panicked.
Yep.
Like, because she has to see him right now before all these other people were there. And then eventually she ends up saying, after she's done with all her tests and all of that, like to get him going, she was like, I'm so sorry I'm acted that way. Because of last year, the RSV season was really bad here.
Yeah, and I mean, she was really nice. I have nothing negative to say about her. Normally, to be honest with you, that kind of thing would aggravate me, because I'm like, why is she being so dramatic when I'm already scared, you know, and all this. But I actually really appreciated it. I felt like she was taking it as seriously as I was. Maybe not as seriously, obviously it's my child, but she was as serious about it, and I felt like I really wanted somebody to be serious about it. And so in that moment, I was like, this is great. I need you to feel like that. Manny made the comment that she acted like it was her own child that was sick, and it really was like that. And I feel like you really honestly don't see that very much. Usually it's kind of like, he looks all right, you know, you can wait a minute, like that kind of thing. But she was really just took him back there, of course telling a parent that RSV is terrible. We already know that, and so we were very nervous already. But you know, she was just, obviously it had a really bad experience, and probably some trauma, honestly, from things she'd seen. So she was definitely quick and got us right back there, and got him immediately hooked up to where we could check his oxygen levels and all that little thing on his foot, which we have an owlet sock, and the original owlet shows a lot more than the new version does. We still have the original, and so we used that on him, and it really does show his oxygen levels, and they had showed that they were good. They were a little bit lower, but still in the 90s. They were lower than what probably they typically are, but not by much. And they were good in the hospital as well. They were, you know, still right where they really in the normal range. So that was great. The whole day at the hospital, we were there for like 8 hours, and his oxygen levels were really good. So that was really helpful. But of course, you know, they'd said it was in his lungs, and he's probably gonna have to be admitted. So honestly, that's what I was expecting, that we were just gonna be admitted. I was just kind of waiting for them to come and admit us to the hospital. But the doctor for the emergency room came in and said that they were gonna do a chest x-ray, asked me all kinds of questions, and listened to his lungs himself. And when he did, he just said, yeah, I hear a little bit, they're a little bit crackly. And the way he said it was so calm. Of course, I'm sure being an emergency room doctor, he hears all kinds of things, you know. But I kind of thought maybe it's not that bad. And it gave me a little bit more hope, honestly, than what I'd had, because he wasn't in there rushing around and panicking. He was also what I needed in that exact moment, just somebody to calm me down. And so he said, I'm going to order the chest x-ray. They'll come in and do it. We'll see where to go from there. So they brought this whole thing, the x-ray machine and everything, in the room. Apparently that's not, every place doesn't always do that, or maybe it's a newer thing in recent years, but some people were asking me if it had to be taken away for this x-ray, and that's what I was afraid of. But they just brought it right to us in the hospital and laid a little, almost like a board kind of thing, very hard piece of something on the bed, and laid him on it. and had told me I could hold his legs as long as I wasn't pregnant. I could be right there with him and hold him, not really hold him down, but hold him still a little bit. And they took the x-ray. So the x-ray took a while to come back. That's the thing about the emergency room. It's an all-day experience. So we were wondering, like, all day how his x-ray was. So they did a nose swab like you would for, COVID or something. It was the same thing. And they tested for that, and also flu and just all sorts of things, and also for RSV, which we pretty much knew. And honestly, I think all of them kind of knew what the results were going to be. Nobody was at all surprised by this, but it came back that he did have RSV. And of course, being he was turned 7 weeks old on that day. And so that was absolutely terrifying. That's obviously like a really bad age. There's no good age to get sick, but that is a really, really bad age to get RSV. And so it was my worst nightmare. Actually, I mean, probably not the worst thing ever, obviously, but it was, as far as having a newborn, one of my worst nightmares was RSV, because I see it so much online, and it looks terrifying, and it looked terrifying in him. It looked just like it does, in the videos and stuff. And so anyway, I was just holding him in the hospital all day, and we had our 2-year-old with us, like I said, so I didn't want to make it a terrible experience for him. Obviously, it wasn't fun. He wasn't really sick yet. He'd kind of had a runny nose, but we kind of figured it was probably starting for him too, and it was. But he was so good, and just sat there and really did really well. Manny took him and actually left for a little while, and I stayed at the hospital to get him some food and stuff. But that's kind of one of the things that's hard, is we don't have family around here at all. And so just kind of navigating those parts of, parenting or just life in general without family around. And my friend that takes Zion, the only person he's ever stayed with besides family, is out of town, very far out of town. And so she was not able to take him or anything. So it was just kind of like he had to be there with us, which I was glad that he was, but I didn't want it to be scary for him and stuff like that. So we were there for about 8 hours, and then the chest x-ray came back.
Yeah, so the chest x-ray came back, and the doctor came in and let us know that there wasn't much of anything in his lungs. Yeah. So basically we were clear to go, and he could get better on his own at home, which is what we thought would happen.
Right.
So, and then
in the
a
first
nurse
place,
came in there before as well and said, this is probably what's going to happen. So, and that's exactly what happened. So,
Yeah, we thought originally leaving for the urgent care that that's exactly what would happen, but we did get kind of scared we would be admitted. It's basically just because of his age. I just thought maybe they'd want to watch him. And so we did get cleared to come home, but they did give us kind of a list of things, like if his lips turn blue or anything like that, then we have to come back, because it means the oxygen is obviously low and he's struggling a lot more. And that's terrifying to hear. But we kept the owlet sock on him just to make sure his levels were staying good, and they were. And so, yeah, it was actually really crazy. He never stopped wanting to eat. He slept, but I mean, newborns do. He slept really no more than he normally would. And he was able to be, you want them to sleep, but we also want them to be alert for feeds and stuff. And he was. And when he was awake, he was happy. He was smiling, kicking, wanting to play. He was kind of starting to get to that stage. And he was doing that. And so he was really doing well. He's a tough little guy. Another thing is he's actually quite a bit smaller than our first son was. He's a big boy. I mean, they both are. He's not a small baby by any means, but our first son was actually at this point a few pounds more than he is. He was just bigger. So of course Lazarus seems really, really tiny to us. He was just under 12 pounds at that appointment, and he's now, today we took him, he's over that now. He's gaining weight really well, but he seems so small. So that was terrifying to watch a little baby that seemed so tiny with these retractions. It was almost unbearable to watch for me as a mom. I literally was having physical pain watching him breathe like that. And so we went home knowing that there was honestly a really good chance that we would have to go back. There's a peak with RSV, and there's usually a day that it peaks. And I had hoped, which it was, that the day that it peaked was the hospital day, but it could have still been the next day. It could have still been the day after that. I didn't really know for sure. So it's just a waiting game. Let's see if he's better or worse tomorrow. He could be worse, so we might have to go back. And so we went home, got some, a cool mist humidifier going, did everything we knew to do. We sat up with him for a couple of nights and held him. We just rotated sleeping.
That was one thing I think helped, is that we held him up all night to sleep. So we rotated who could stay awake and who could go to sleep between us. And he would just sleep on our chest, upright. That way we felt that it didn't let anything settle in his chest and make him more sick. And then also, I think what helped him as well is breastfeeding, because of all the antibodies that he was getting and the fact that he wasn't getting dehydrated. So
yeah, that was one thing they were concerned about. They kept asking, is he eating, is he eating, is he eating, because babies his age can get dehydrated pretty easily. And that's they were saying, and I was reading, sometimes they get hospitalized for the breathing, but sometimes it's just because of the hydration, because they're not alert enough, they won't wake up long enough to eat, and they end up very dehydrated, which of course is dangerous as well. So the doctor even made a comment. He pinched his skin and kind of looked at him and made a comment that he's very well hydrated and he's obviously eating well. And that made me feel good, because obviously, when you're breastfeeding, you want the best for your baby. You want them to be, you always want the best for your baby, even if you're not breastfeeding, but you want to make sure that your body is doing what it's supposed to be doing. And so I knew that it was, because he was hydrated, and I just felt like there's not much that I could do to help him, and I wanted to help him, but that was one thing that I could do, was feed him. My body could provide that, and so that made me feel better, because it was the only physical thing. Obviously we were praying and doing those things, and that is ultimately what helped. God is ultimately the healer, but God gives you these resources and these things, and he creates our bodies in such a way that we can actually heal ourselves, our bodies can heal themselves, and so it's really, really cool. So yeah, we held him upright, we did all the things we knew to do, and I believe the hospital day was probably day 5 of RSV, based on when his symptoms started, and based on the fact that I think that was the peak day. The next day, he was still very sick, but I did seem to think he was a little bit better. It wasn't quite as bad. It was still bad. I mean, if you'd seen it, you'd be like, wow. I mean, I showed my mom how he was breathing on the next day, and she was like, oh my gosh, that looks terrible. And I was like, yes, but honestly, it's better than it was yesterday. She didn't see it that day. It was just so crazy. We never showed her on FaceTime or anything. But the day 6, which is what I think it was better. And then by day 7, he was really, really a lot better. That was the day that he really turned around. And ever since then, he's done really well. And we went to the doctor today to get him checked out. They wanted us to have a 1-week kind of post RSV checkup, just to make sure that he was doing okay. And of course,
where we're coming from right now,
right, it can turn into pneumonia. I mean, there's so many things that can happen. They get bronchiolitis. It's not bronchitis, it's something else. I never really even knew what that was, but they can get that, and it can be bad. So they just want to watch him. And the doctor said for a 2-month-old, he has done extremely well with RSV, that it's not always like this, and we're very thankful for that. That literally, he was not really very sick considering his age and all the things. I mean, it could be much worse. His retractions were the main thing we could notice, and he sounded, you could hear it in him when he was breathing. He sounded very rattly.
I said to Rose that he sounded like those candles that crackle, those crackling candles.
Yeah, kind of supposed to sound like wood kind of thing. That's exactly what he sounded like when he would breathe. And it's really hard as a parent, because obviously, you breathe a lot. And so every time he breathes, he's sounding terrible. He's retracting. So all day and all night, you're just watching him do this. And it was really emotionally hard. It was hard for our 2-year-old. He kept asking if he's okay. He still mentions it. He asks if Lazarus is all better now. It was very, very stressful for all of us. And like I said, not having anybody around, it's just us here, And so that, gosh, it's like a roller coaster. It's just us here. So, that is emotionally obviously stressful in those times, because there's nobody to come and, be with you or whatever. But even more so than that, just the logistical side of it, we have nobody to take one child if the other one needs something else or whatever. And it's just, it's hard. When I thought we were going to be hospitalized, I was really, really nervous, because I didn't want to leave either of them. I don't want to go and stay in the hospital and leave anyone. and make it stressful.
It's crazy to think about too, because in just a short amount of time, if he gets it again, it's not going to affect him the same way.
Yeah.
It's like Zion, I'm pretty sure he has it. Mm-hmm. It's just like he has a cold. Like, right. The difference in like how it's treated and how the body reacts because of your age and your immune system, it's crazy. Like, just the difference in the amount of the time frame is like wild.
And I will say, like, I know it probably seems online like people exaggerate it and like, oh, it's not that bad. It's exactly like in a small baby, in an infant, it's exactly like what it looks like online. Like what we experienced, the retractions and the breathing and all that was the exact same. The only thing we thankfully didn't experience was hospitalization and needing oxygen or ventilator. I mean, there's so many terrible things that can happen. But honestly, we weren't that far off. If his lung x-ray had not been good, I think they would have probably kept us. But thankfully that was clear. And that is nothing but the grace of God. It is, I feel like, probably pretty rare, honestly, for a baby this age, this little, this tiny, to not be needing some kind of more help than that, you know. And they even said, like, he'll probably cough and have maybe some level of bronchitis and things like that for a little while, just from being so little and having this really intense sickness. But he's not even really coughing that much. I mean, he once in a while might cough, and we're still only a week out from him being super sick. So I feel like he's not going to have long-term issues, but I know it can cause. I know of a baby that has asthma now, and they're saying that it's related to him having RSV at the same age Lazarus is. So, you know, it's just like, it can be really bad. But also, I don't say that to scare anybody if you're watching this and your baby is sick, because he recovered extremely well and extremely fast. So that is also a definite possibility. We just prayed over him. We declared that RSV cannot stay in his body. And I personally believe that is ultimately what does it. God is just like the final say of everything, right? And I know he didn't want my baby sick either, and I just trust him in that.
RSV is scary, but more times than not, your kid's going to be fine.
Right.
So you just have to think about that.
And I kept reminding myself of that, even though, like, obviously it can be really bad. Even the babies that are hospitalized, and that's terrible, it's hard, but most babies do make a full recovery. And so I just, even statistically, that is true. And, you know, statistics tend to be on the scary end of anything. Okay, sorry about that. Our camera cut out right when we were about to end it. So I think we pretty much said everything that we needed to say, but that was our experience with RSV. So thankful for the outcome that we had, and praying for everybody in this season who is having the struggle with this sickness. So yeah, I'm going to go ahead and wrap up this video here. Let us know what else you want us to talk about. We'll see you in the next one.